We got to gird up our minds. We have to be critically engaged in thought about our next move and not just driven by our emotions. Emotions are real, but we have to be able to work through them so that our decisions are intentional and have strategy to them. Listen, we've been talking about transitions, and life takes us through changes. And Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, said that change is the constant in life. And so we've been talking about it for some time now because really, to live is to go through transitions in various ways. And we've talked about the realities of geographical transitions. We've talked about developmental transitions. We've talked about social transitions from one social circle to another. We've talked about various types of growth and development. And now we've moved to like, okay, getting into the new place and settling in to this, at least this transition or stage of stability that we have, because you can't argue that life is kind of like this flux between seasons of stability and seasons of transition, and then seasons of stability and then seasons of transition. So we're alternating back and forth because the broadness of our audience. Some of you may be in a place where you've settled in, and others of you may just be experiencing a shift and the feelings of loss and even the feelings of happiness and the mixed emotions, happy sadness, if you will, of life's transition. So we've offered some suggestions real quick, and then Dr. Shepard, just to recap for those, we've talked about the importance of accepting the reality of change, to holding to God's unchanging hand, the role of faith in the midst of transitions. In fact, the hymn writer said, "Time is filled with swift transition, but I'm holding on to the unchanging hand of God, because He's the God who said to Malachi, 'I am the Lord, and I change not.'" So, in the midst of all the changes of life, there is a consistency to the God of our faith. And then, so accept the reality. We talked about acknowledging the grief. Yes, there are some moments I'm changing and I'm going through some shifts and some things, and I'm feeling the loss. Um, we've talked about what I would call a locus of control check, which is really the serenity prayer. Help me to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so we talked just in terms of those about some of the ways that we can help go through the transition, because coping skills are essential, healthy coping skills in the midst of the transition. So that's just a little bit of a recap. Dr. Shepard's going to take us further into today's content and discussion. And
Where we left off last week was so powerful. I received some messages about last week's show, right? Within the last 2 weeks, and we've been talking about the difference between knowing if you're at a rest stop or the final destination. And that really has been staying with me, Bishop, as we are in transition, as we're on this journey. And we also were looking at King David and how he was living in Ziklag. And we had entitled some of our shows Living in Ziklag. And we had talked about what happens when you're in the place of refuge and it turns into your worst nightmare. That Those two questions really stayed with me, Bishop. Knowing the difference, I don't know if the first was necessarily a question, but just knowing the difference between the rest stop versus the final destination, and what happens if you get to that destination as a place of refuge. You were good, you're hiding from the enemy, and then it ends up being your worst nightmare. And Bishop, I really want to stick with that because it resonated with so many different people. Because people find it very hard to know as they're in transition, is this a place where I should make a stop, or is this actually where I should be at and set up camp? Knowing that difference between a rest stop and the final destination. And I'll just lead off real quick and then Bishop will take over. But even in my study time today and in prayer time, I was just thinking about the mindset of how do you know the difference between if you're at the rest stop or if you're at the final destination. And it really takes a faith mindset. It takes the right mindset. It takes a determined mindset to know. And in that mindset, you have to recognize those distractors. So that's my first point I'm going to put out. How do you recognize if you're at a rest stop versus a final destination? Look at if there are distractors present that will help in choosing if this is a final stop for you or is it a rest stop for you. Well, what are you talking about, Dr. Shepard? Well, there are decisions that are made out of our mindsets. Many times we make decisions out of a rushed mindset. We're worrying, we're stressed, we're frustrated, and we'll make decisions. We'll make some critical decisions when we're in the wrong mindset. And I understand how that is because honestly, I believe that there are many things that that we will put on ourselves because we get distracted. We allow ourselves to get distracted, and the enemy himself will distract us. He doesn't have power over us, but he will distract us so that our mindsets get clogged up. I don't know if anyone out there does laundry, but if you have a dryer at your house and you know that there is that filter, and if that filter stays clogged, it will not dry those clothes as well as it should. And so sometimes you have to make sure that that filter, not sometimes you have to make sure that filter is clean. Otherwise, those towels and those other things that we put into the dryer, they won't dry as fast. And it's a distractor. And you get frustrated looking at the dryer like, what's wrong with you? I got to go buy a new one. No, it's because the filter is clogged. And so it really let me know, Bishop, that sometimes we don't know if we're at the right stop, the rest stop, or the final destination because we got distracted and we just ended up at a destination and we don't know whether or not is it really meant to be for me to stay here or just stay here for a few days, a few years, or is this really the final destination? So we want to make sure we're recognizing those distractors. There was one example also that I heard even this past week. People commonly would tell me, "Hey, Shepherd, you know, I was going to be a doctor too, um, but I just couldn't grasp that math or science. I just couldn't do it. It was just too hard for me." And they decide to choose another profession. They decide to choose something else. And sometimes I wonder, like, man, do we end up settling and or giving up because something seems a little bit too hard for us? Even though we know that that was the ultimate goal, we know that this is what we desire, we know that that's what our passion is, but now we ended up settling because we got distracted because something came too hard. Something became too frustrating for us. It's something that we didn't want to do anymore. And so, Bishop, that's what I was really pondering this morning, that these distractors, how do we recognize these distractors and how do we allow these distractors to infiltrate our mindsets to where it doesn't help us to recognize, hey, am I at a rest stop or am I at a final destination as I'm going through this life of transitions?
Absolutely. I was it's so enjoying what you were just sharing, Dr. Shepard, for several reasons. One is and I don't know if we talked about this, but I'm in the middle of preaching a series at the Tabernacle, and the preaching series is literally entitled "Mindset Matters."
Wow.
And so to hear you talk about mindset is just really confirmation. Some of our Tabernacle families watching now, and so they know we've been talking about mindset matters. It was inspired from First Peter 1:13 when Peter says, "Gird up the loins of your mind and be sober." And it's an interesting phrase without getting too much into it, but it suggests that to gird up the loins of your mind suggests that our thoughts have reproductive power.
Oh, yes.
And so there's this whole idea of, he says, you got to be sober in this season. And so a lot of what I teach in the classroom has to deal with making distinctions between critical thinking and emotional reasoning.
Yes.
And they're two different kind of activities. So two different phenomena. And so in this case, he says it's the time we got to be sober. We got to gird up our minds. We have to be critically engaged in thought about our next move and not just driven by our emotions. Emotions are real, but we have to be able to work through them so that our decisions are intentional and have strategy to them. And so some of the things we have to do with that. Um, yes, absolutely. I see Janet Rogers. That's good for planning. It sure is. It sure is. That's how that convicted me. I'm so with you there. And so mindset matters. That's what it was just saying to me. And so sometimes, to be honest, first of all, I'll deal with some of the spiritual parts. Of course, first of all, pray. But my definition of prayer, and I come from the position that we can't cheapen what prayer is in terms of just thinking of it as a drop off kind of thing. Like we're driving through the drive through, saying, I want this, give me this, give me that. And then when we turn the corner, we want the server to have it. And then we just pull off and go about our business. Well, that's not really prayer in the fullest biblical sense. Prayer is really not a monologue, but a dialogue. And it gives God time to respond. And God responds in various kinds of ways. And it's what we call in spiritual formation and spiritual development disciplines as contemplative prayer. Where we, as the psalmist said, in that law does he meditate both day and night, where we work through our issues and where we allow God to do as the scriptures say, search me and know me. Show me my inner thoughts. In the language of, to make it a little psycho-spiritual, show me my core beliefs. show me my internal dialogue. Show me the things that are shaping my decisions, and show me what I need to work through so that I can separate avoidance from attachment issues. Because when we're talking about whether I should stay in this place or whether I should go from this place, usually one of those are influencing. I'm either overly attached and don't want to let go, or I'm avoiding a difficult situation that I'm not supposed to leave, but I'm supposed to work through. But my avoidance issues are causing me to flee, which is a trauma response. And so am I being avoidant, or am I being, oh, this is a time for attachment? And so you have to work through those. And I emphasize the word work because it surprises people sometimes to know that self-development and self-improvement is work for all of us. It's work. Actually, that's the heart of it. There's middle phase work. That's there's intro and intake, and then there's termination. But between intake and termination, there's middle phase work where we're working and seeing our stuff. And so that's very relevant when it concerns our environment. Am I attached? Am I avoidant? If I am attached, how am I attached? Am I anxiously attached? Am I secure in my attachment in this place? If not, I may become avoidant. And so I'm not answering any of these questions for anybody. It's just laying out the things that have to be considered as we gird up the loins of our minds to be sober about, is it time to leave Ziklag or is it time to work through? And if we stay with that text, and real quickly, David did both. There were times when he did work through some issues with King Achish, when he said, listen, I got to learn to live among these Philistines for a minute and work with them and work through them. So that means I still have an assignment here. I still have an attachment here, but I got to do some relationship work. I need some social intelligence to kick in. I got to have some critical conversations and even maybe some difficult conversations, but they can be helpful. So it's not time. And then the crisis comes, and I'll end right here, because oftentimes opportunities to grow come in the forms of crises. So does this crisis mean grow or does it mean go? Is the critical question. I'm just raising stuff to say this is what we're working through. That takes work. It's not a quick fix. It's not a pill you can take and everything becomes clear. It's like you got to work through that. And sometimes to do that, it takes more than us. And I really will stop here. It takes more than us trying to work through it by ourselves. Wow. Sometimes we need someone to talk to. Sometimes we need a pastoral care provider. Sometimes we need psychotherapeutic services. Sometimes we need both.
Yes.
So a critical collaboration, if you will. But the point is, what it means is that I want to work through these issues and I don't want to try to self indulge because I may not be able to see my own hindrances and blockages. And so I need help. So there's help and hope for anybody who's in those places. Dr. Shepherd, please take us further.
And thank you, Bishop, for laying that out so clearly. Is that as you are deciding, really look and see, are you avoiding or something that may be attached that you are trying to hold on to? You know, as Bishop said, we're not trying to necessarily give advice to what you need to do right now. We're trying to help you to make the assessments.
Right.
That really is what we're providing, because there's so many different unique situations that can be applied to what we're talking about today. Uh, Please do not take this and then run to your pastor and say, "Oh my Lord, I was on listen, Spirit of mine. That's time for me to leave that church." That
Right.
is not
Please. No.
what we are saying. And don't even run and tell your doctor, "Oh my Lord, they told me that I need to avoid this medication." That is not what we are saying. I just want to make sure we're clear, because I can kind of feel that,
Right.
because people are always looking and grasping for that next move. And what I can hear the Spirit saying is that you need to stop and assess. You need to really look and make sure you're not distracted. And I felt what you were saying, Bishop, because so many times we will make decisions when we are distracted. We'll get distracted while we're driving. And yes, I know you're listening to us even while some of you are driving, and some of you might even have to pull over because the Lord is speaking to you right now. But we want to make sure you are not distracted, because when you are distracted even while driving, you will tend to make errors. You'll tend to get into accidents. You'll tend to cause a someone else to get hurt. Isn't that something who wasn't even bothering you? And then you find yourself, you are unscathed. And that's the thing that really trips me out, is that when those who are drunk, many times they survive the accident, but it's the person who was minding their own business who gets hurt because of the distractors, because of the being under the influence. And so we really are, man, Bishop, I tell you, this is good. I feel
That analogy right there about driving is good because I know, like you said, we get distracted and we may think we're handling all of it. You know, get a good text line going and we texting and driving, but the data shows that our driving skills are being affected.
yes.
Even though we think, because our world is small in my little vehicle, but ask the person behind you.
Wow.
Ask the person in the other lane.
Right.
And they will have a different man. That analogy will preach. But keep
Yes, sir. Because even when you are distracted like that, you can't even stop. They even have shown that when you're distracted like that, you literally go almost a whole football field before you realize that it's time to make a stop. And so that is so important. Let me just tell you something. There's something that I've heard even played on this radio station that Bishop Jakes says. I'm not sure if it's a direct quote, but it says there's nothing more powerful than a changed mind. That is so true. There's nothing more powerful than a changed mind. How does that flow with this, Dr. Shepherd? We're talking about mindset matters. And so in this year 2024, which has been difficult for many of you all, I know that. I've even expressed on here personally how it's been difficult for me. But I want to let you know that my mindset matters. My mindset matters. That's how I'm able to be on this show each week, being able to deposit the faith, be able to give out the words of encouragement. Bishop is here to give out the words of encouragement, because even though we go through, we still have to have a determined mindset as we go through these transitions. I tell you, I'm not the same person even when I started January 1st of 2024, and now it's March 2nd. And let me say, in that, there have been some changes that have occurred, and there have been some distractions. So we want to make sure that we do not yield to those distractions, but we want to make sure that we are living according to faith. And Bishop, please take it out from here.
Listen, so we're about to go. We're out of time. Well, listen, we hope Spirit of Mind's been a blessing to you, and we hope you got the core pieces. We'll pick up because Angela Perkins raised a great question: how can we help someone who's dealing with this place, and we'll pick up there perhaps next week. Listen, so we've done both. We count not ourselves to have apprehended. Here's my closing thought. I've done both. I've overstayed some stuff because I was attached when it was time to move from Ziklag. It's human, and I've left too early because avoidant issues kick in. It doesn't make us bad people; it makes us human. But there's help and hope for us, and that's the good thing. And we'll stay there and pick up there by the grace of God, because it's by the grace of God. We look forward to seeing you the very next time right here on Spirit in Mind.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Spirit in Mind, and we're also on Instagram at Spirit in Mind Live. Join us next time for a new episode of Spirit in Mind.